I switched from KDE Plasma to Niri with the Noctalia shell. I'm running Bazzite, and today I'm gonna show you how I configured everything, and I'm gonna give you a little tour of the Noctalia shell so you can see for yourself if it's a good match for you. Stick around. Niri is a compositor, which means it provides a way to render and manage windows, workspaces and other panels, but not much beyond that. It's not a fully integrated desktop environment like KDE, rather being functionally equivalent to Kwin in KDE. This is why you usually add a shell on top of Niri, just like you have the Plasma shell for KDE. We could of course simply use something more minimal like Waybar, but we opted to go with a full-blown shell instead. We decided to use QuickShell, described in their official website as a toolkit for building status bars, widgets, lock screens and other desktop components using Qt Quick. More specifically, we decided to install the Noctalia shell, which is available on the Terra Copper, a major community repository for Fedora and its derivatives by Fire Labs. Terra is available on Bazzite image despite being disabled by default. We also considered installing Vicini, which is a custom launcher, but ended up deciding against this as Noctalia already provides its own integrated launcher. Transitionally, we're also keeping KDE installed and we'll be using most of the tools available in KDE like KWallet 6. For theme management, we decided to switch to Qt6 CT. For screen captured, we tried using XTG Desktop Portal KDE, since it was already available from the installed KDE, however it didn't work correctly, so we switched to XTG Desktop Portal GNOME, as suggested in Niri's documentation on screencasting. We also hit an issue where not all tray icons would appear on the Noctalia bar, but we ended up fixing this by creating a custom launch script named Tray Launch. You can check it out on our previous video on the LTOS. Our Niri config is split between two files, the base system-wide config and our user config, where we include the system-wide file and expand from there. We were also required to create a config for portals and set up a few environment variables. We configured Noctalia manually via its UI, and we'll cover both of these in this video. So we were required to create two configurations, two system-wide configurations, one for portals and one for Qt theming. By default, you'll get a config for Niri under user share XTG desktop portal Niri portals conf, and this uses GNOME and GTK and uses the GNOME keyring, but for now we are still using the KWallet 6 keyring. This is not ideal, but because we had already pre-configured everything with KDE, we stick with it for now. And in order to make it work, we were required to add our own config under .config xtg desktop portals conf, and in here we set this to GNOME, but we keep the file chooser as KDE as we want to use Dolphin still. And we set screencast and screenshot to GNOME because OBS wouldn't work otherwise. It doesn't seem to work with the portal for KDE. We also were required to add a config under .config environment niri.conf with these environment variables: Qt QPA platform set to YotLD, Qt QPA platform theme set to Qt6 CT, and the same for the Qt6 version. This ensures that Qt6 CT is used for theming on for our Qt apps instead of the KDE system settings. In order to make sure that KWallet loads properly, if you take a look at our system-wide config, you'll see that we've got a spawn startup for user libexec pam KWallet init, and this will make sure that the password for your KWallet won't be prompt once you log in, so you don't have to input your password twice on the login manager and then again for the system wallet. We also import the YotLD display and XTG current desktop environment variables, both to systemctl and to the dbus activation environment. And then we just spawn the Noctalia shell by running the QS command, which stands for quick shell, with the configuration for Noctalia shell. So now let's take a look at Niri's system-wide config that we provide. I already saw these initial lines. In here we've got the screenshot path, because Niri provides a screenshot tool out of the box that you can assign to a keybind like so, just by calling screenshot, screenshot screen or screenshot window. Okay, and you can set a path with a format for your timestamp. You can also set this to null, and it will only copy the screenshot to your clipboard, and you can paste it and save no file. Then we've got this prefer no CSD option, which just hides window decorations by default. There is a hotkey overlay with information on your keybinds, and we set it to hide not bound, which means that keybinds that are not defined will not be displayed. Then we've got our input. In here we can set our keyboard and mouse. We can set the layout, which by default is US, but I personally override this on my user config. We'll get to that. We enable numlock by default, and then for mouse we use a flat acceleration profile, which is what you want to do if you're a gamer. Usually high DPI mice don't use acceleration because they are so precise that you can just set it to flat. It's a lot nicer. And then we've got our mouse cursor theme. We use the same as the one that is set by default on KDE, which is breeze cursors with a size 24. Then we set our layout options. There's a lot here. So we set our gaps to 16 pixels, which is what you see these margins around windows. We set always center single window. This means that when you open a window, it will appear as centered by default, otherwise it will be left aligned. And then we set our preset column widths, and this lets us resize, cycle through different sizes for our window. It can be half the screen, 2/3 or 1/3 of the screen. By default, the column width will be half the screen. This is the size that a window displays when opening. And then we also set a focus ring, a very soft focus ring around the active window, and we use a gradient for this. If we change any of these options in real time, it will update also in real time in Niri. You don't need to reload anything. I'll show you this on the user config. Then we also disable hot corners. I personally don't like them. You can turn them on if you prefer, which is when you use your mouse to touch the corner of the screen, it will open the navigation, the workspace navigation. I use a mouse keybind instead. I've got a gamer's mouse with 9 buttons, and I map these buttons to all those tasks. I don't use them for gaming, but I use them to open a new tab on the browser, to close a tab, to reopen a closed tab, and stuff like that. Then we've got our window rules. This one is global because it doesn't have a particular match. And we set the corner radius to 16, which is these rounded corners, and we clip to geometry. Otherwise, the window wouldn't be clipped. And then we have a few rules that are specific to applications. The way that you discover this app ID is by running Niri message windows, and in here you'll find the app ID. So for Kitty it will be Kitty, for instance. Okay, we open Brave as maximized by default, same for Kdenlive. The initial screen for Kdenlive, where you pick the last project, will be floating because by default it wasn't properly detected. And we've got a few other defaults here. We've got also a rule for picture-in-picture. You will probably need this on YotLD, and this is how you set it up for Niri. So we use a match based on the title, because for Brave the picture-in-picture window does not have an app ID. So we match based on the title only, and it's exactly picture-in-picture. It will be floating. It will default to this size and be positioned on the bottom right with 16 pixels, which is the same as the gap. So it exactly matches the border of the current window. Then there is this debug. I forgot what it's used for, but I believe it's something to do with Discord. It fixes something with Discord. Which, by the way, I don't use. I use Vesktop instead, which is just Discord pre-configured to work correctly on YotLD. And then we've got several keybinds here. Most of them are inspired by other configs, for instance from CatchyOS, and some stuff that I picked up when I used i3 as well. And so we have a global quit keybind for Niri, just in case Noctalia crashes or something like that. Then we also have a keybind for Noctalia to open the session menu. This session menu will let you lock screen, reboot, shut down, and all that. Then we've got mod space, which opens the launcher, so this thing here. We've got mod B, which hides or toggles the top bar. So essentially you have Noctalia running, but you can hide the top bar and kind of have vanilla Niri feel if you need a cleaner environment temporarily. Then we've got our screenshot keybinds. I tried to imitate the same ones that we use for Spectacle on KDE. We've got our media keybinds for raising volume or muting or whatever. We use WPCTL for this, and to control the player we use the player CTL. As you can see, you can add little configs to your keybinds, like allow when locked, so you can still set the volume and, you know, navigate on your player when locked. Then we've got our keybinds for Windows. We use mod Q to close, mod tab to toggle the overview of the workspaces, and we've got a bunch of keybinds to resize windows, mod F for full screen, M to maximize, C to center the column regardless of whether there are other columns. We call them columns because a column can have multiple windows, right? So it's a vertical space, and we center the full column. We cannot center a window if it's within a column with two windows, for instance. And then we saw the presets up top, you know, the resizing presets, a half, 1/3, 2/3 of the screen, and this is how you switch between those presets. You can also toggle window floating with mod T. And then we've got our basic navigation. We use the arrows to focus the windows. We use also the Vim style keybinds to do the same action, although we will in the future rebind this so that we can you know, move windows to existing columns. We also use home and end to navigate to the beginning and end of a stack. And we use something similar but add control so that we can move the window. And then we set up something similar as well for workspaces, navigating in the workspaces. We also use mod wheel scroll up and down with a cooldown, otherwise it will scroll too fast and it's not as usable. And so this is what I use the most instead. You know, the typical alt tab, I use mostly this. With control, you'll be able to move the window, or rather move the column a workspace up or down. And we also can move windows within, and I believe this is duplicate, so I will need to revise this later. Yeah, I will need to revise this later. This is incomplete. But as you can see, we try to reproduce focusing windows and moving windows with control for when you want to move, and without control when you want to just switch between them. And then we use shift for mostly horizontal scrolling instead of vertical scrolling. We also have focus workspace that is numeric, so you can jump to one of these workspaces or move a column to one of these workspaces as preferred. And this is our basic Niri config. Like I said, there are some mistakes here, but I will correct these in the future. Also, there is a user config, and if you want to use your own config, you can do so simply by starting with including the system-wide config, and then you can overwrite anything. For instance, I overwrite the screenshot path to null because I just want to copy to clipboard and not keep a file for each screenshot. And then I also skip the hotkey overlay at startup entirely. I set my keyboard language to Portuguese, which is what I use. I also set my display scale to 200%, and I even add a custom column width, which I use for recording this screen right here that you are seeing. And then I tend to test configs that I want to move to the global config over here. As you can see, I'm testing changing the HNL to consumer expel, which is the command that lets you move a window to an existing column. And at the beginning, let's take a look at this in particular. So I'm launching all the applications on my that appear on my tray icon. I'm launching them here, and some of them were not appearing correctly. They were being launched and they remained in the background, but the icon was not visible. And this is why I've got tray launch over here, which is a custom script that we added to DLTOS, our custom image for Bazzite. And in here, what we do, this is just, you know, regular stuff, but then what we do that is relevant is calling GDBus wait for our KDE status notifier watcher, and this lets the tray load before we can execute or start up the app, and this will ensure that the icon will appear here. This script is available on the repo for the LTOS as well if you want to download it standalone. You can drop it under local bin and use it, you know, just give it execution permissions and you can use it for your local config. And so you can, I'm using Flatpak, this is the default for applications on Bazzite. And so I just launched Signal, Telegram, Discord, SyncThangy and Cryptomator using tray launch to make sure the icons appear correctly. And that's pretty much it for your Niri config. For instance, if you'd like to change the focus ring, let's say focus ring, and you want to change the width, I'm going to use 10 so it's visible. When I save this file, you'll see that the focus ring for the window just increased automatically without me having to reload this. I don't know if color can be set like this. It cannot. It fails when this happens, and you can just, you know, delete it and redo it. And if I delete this, then this will go back to normal. And this is pretty much how you configure Niri. You can check this config on the DLTOS repo on DataLab Tech TV under GitHub. It's over there, both configs. The user config is on the .files repo. Let me just add a few notes about auto-starting applications. Before you add them to your Niri config as spawn at startup, make sure that these applications are not auto-starting, because if you set auto-start for an application, it will likely create a desktop entry under .config auto-start, and this desktop entry will make your application launch before it reaches the Niri config, and therefore it will not wait for tray to be available, because it will not call your local tray launch script. Okay. Another thing that can happen that influences application launching is if the application is X11 only, you will need to make sure that X-Wayland is running. Now Niri will take care of this for you. But if you for some reason decide to set it as off, at least make sure that your user service is enabled. As you can see, for me, I have it disabled because I let Niri manage that for me. Okay. So another note about running Noctalia commands. So you need to know how to do this to set custom keybinds. You can do it, and let me just start a private fish shell so it doesn't spoil the fun. You can do it by running QS for quick shell with the config for Noctalia shell, and then you run IPC call and your command, for instance launcher toggle. Okay, and as you can see, just open the launcher. You can find all these configurations under the Noctalia shell. If you search for keybinds, you'll find core and navigation, system controls, everything is defined in here. So this is the command that you add after IPC call. If you copy this, it will copy IPC call launcher toggle. Okay, the full command from IPC. And there are numerous things that you can do with this. Okay. Some of them I didn't even know, and I'm still using, for instance, the emoji window from KDE, but actually there is one here that you can open directly. And I also noticed there is a volume increase and decrease, so I could use this instead of WPCTL. And also you can control your media player through Noctalia, so this is great. If you want to configure it this way, you can really control everything with keybinds as you prefer. And that's it for a quick video on how I configured my Niri compositor and about how I handle the Noctalia shell. I hope you found this interesting. If you want to have access to all of my config files, please take a look at the DLTOS repo. Under system files, etc. Niri, you'll find the system-wide config, and also go to the .files repo on the same account for GitHub, where you'll find the config that is user specific with all the custom tray launch script calls. Okay, as usual, you'll find a blog post under datalabtechtv.com. You can follow the channel on Blue Sky for updates, or drop in at Discord to have a little chat. Don't forget to drop a like and subscribe to keep mastering systems.